everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humaning, the podcast where we talk about all the ups and downs and everything in between when it comes to being human, especially when it comes to parenting. I'm Sophie, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. We've got such a good topic lined up, one that's honestly close to both our hearts. Today, we're diving into raising emotionally strong kids. What does that really mean? Why does it matter? How do we actually do it, especially when life gets messy and real?
Oh, I'm so glad we're talking about this, Sophie. Hi, everyone. I'm James. And if you're new here, welcome. You picked a great episode to join us. And just before we really dig in, if you're enjoying these conversations, it means a lot if you can hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps our little community grow and keeps more conversations like this coming your way. Okay, back to the topic. Raising emotionally strong kids. I feel like this is something every parent wants, but it can be so tough to know where to start, especially when you're dealing with your own emotions, too.
Absolutely, yes. I think sometimes there's this pressure to get it right, to always know what to say or do, and honestly, that's just not real life. For me, raising emotionally strong kids isn't about teaching them to be happy all the time or to never struggle, but about helping them understand their feelings, express them, and bounce back when things get hard. It's about giving them the tools to navigate life, the good, the messy, and the in-between.
That's so true. And I think sometimes we equate emotional strength with like stoicism, being tough, not showing vulnerability. But I actually think it's the opposite, right? It's the kids who can be honest about when they're scared or sad or confused. Those are the ones who end up being resilient because they're not bottling it up. They know it's okay to feel things, and that's huge.
Yes. And it's so important to model that as parents, too. I remember this one morning, my daughter was having a full-on meltdown before school. She was tired, anxious about a test, just not having it. Old me would have wanted to fix it, or maybe I'd have gotten frustrated. But I caught myself and just sat with her. I said, "It sounds like you're having a really hard morning. Want a hug?" She sobbed into my shoulder for a few minutes, and then, almost like magic, she calmed down. She still didn't want to go to school, but she did. And it made me realize that sometimes our job isn't to rescue them from every hard feeling, but to show up and be present with them in it.
Oh, I love that. And it's so hard sometimes, right? Because everything in us wants to make it better immediately. I have a similar story with my son. He was dealing with some friendship drama. He's in middle school, so you can imagine. I caught myself wanting to jump in, give advice, or even call the other parents. Classic dad move, right? But instead, I tried to just listen. I asked y'all, do you want solutions or do you want to just talk about it? And he actually looked relieved. He said, I just want to talk. I realized he wasn't asking me to solve his problems. He just needed a sounding board.
That's such a powerful question, James. Do you want solutions, or do you want to just talk? I think I need to borrow that one. It's so respectful, too. Because sometimes, as adults, we forget that kids are their own people, right? They have their own ways of processing things. And when we give them that space, we're telling them, I trust you with your feelings. I trust you to figure things out. I'm here if you need me, but I believe in you.
Exactly. And I think that ties into this idea that emotional strength isn't about not feeling things, but about knowing what to do with those feelings. Like, how do you process disappointment? How do you handle anger without hurting yourself or others? And honestly, that's a lifelong skill. I'm still working on it myself. But I think when we let kids see us working through our own emotions, maybe even apologizing when we mess up, we're teaching them that it's okay to not have it all together.
So true. I think sometimes parents worry that showing their own vulnerability will make their kids anxious or insecure. But what I've seen is when we can say things like, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, I need a few minutes to myself. Or, I was frustrated earlier and I'm sorry if I took it out on you. It actually models self-awareness and repair. It teaches kids that everyone has hard moments and that you can come back from them.
Absolutely. And, I think apologizing to our kids is so underrated. It's something my own parents didn't really do because it wasn't the norm in their generation. but I try to do it with my kids, and I've noticed it makes them more comfortable apologizing to me and to each other. It just creates this culture in the family where it's safe to mess up and to own it.
Yes. And it makes mistakes less scary, right? I think a lot of emotional strength comes from knowing that you're allowed to make mistakes and that it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You can repair, you can learn, you can grow. And that's such a gift for kids to take with them into the world.
Couldn't agree more. And I think another piece of this is helping kids name their feelings. I know that sounds basic, but honestly, a lot of adults struggle with it too. Sometimes we lump everything under mad or sad, but there's this whole spectrum: frustrated, disappointed, nervous, excited, even things like hopeful or proud. The more words kids have for their emotions, the easier it is for them to express what's going on and ask for what they need.
That's such a good point. We do a lot of feelings check-ins at home. Just simple things like, how are you feeling right now? Sometimes my kids will say, I don't know, and that's okay too. But it opens the door. Or we'll use books or stories to talk about how characters might be feeling and why. It helps them see that emotions aren't good or bad. They're just information.
I love that. We've used a feelings chart at home, actually. It's got all these little faces with different expressions. Sometimes when my youngest is having a tough time, I'll just hand him the chart and say, can you show me which face matches how you feel? It takes the pressure off having to explain, especially for little ones who don't have all the words yet.
That's brilliant. And honestly, even older kids. Sometimes it's easier to point than to talk, especially if the feelings are big or overwhelming. I think the more we can normalize talking about emotions, the less scary they become. And that's the foundation for real resilience.
Absolutely. I also think it's important to talk about how we, as parents, react to our kids' emotions. Sometimes, if our kids are anxious or sad, we can get anxious or sad too, which makes sense because we care so much. But if we're not careful, we end up sending the message that their feelings are too much or that they need to hide them to protect us.
Oh, yes. That's such a common dynamic. I've definitely been there. My daughter used to have a lot of anxiety around bedtime, and I would get so tense, like, oh no, here we go again. But I realized that my stress was making her more anxious. When I started working on calming myself first, taking a breath, reminding myself, she's safe, I'm safe, we can do this, it actually helped her settle down too. It's like our nervous systems are connected.
That's so true. There have been times when my kids are melting down, and I can just feel my own frustration rising. Sometimes I have to literally step out of the room for a minute, take a few deep breaths, and remind myself, he's having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. That little shift in mindset helps me show up with more empathy.
I love that. Having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. That's such a powerful reframe. It helps us see our kids as partners, not adversaries. And it makes it easier to respond with compassion even when things are tough.
Definitely. And I think this all ties back to the idea that emotional strength isn't about suppressing or denying feelings, but about being able to move through them. And sometimes that means sitting with discomfort or letting your kid be sad or disappointed without immediately trying to cheer them up. That can be really hard for parents, especially when we just want our kids to be happy.
Oh, yes. That's such a big one. I think our culture tends to prioritize happiness above all else, but life is so much bigger than that. There's value in sadness, in frustration, in boredom even. If we can help our kids ride those waves, instead of trying to avoid them, we're giving them such a gift. I remember once my son didn't get invited to a birthday party, and he was devastated. My instinct was to distract him, maybe take him out for ice cream or something. But instead, I just sat with him, acknowledged how much it hurt, and let him cry. Later, he told me he felt better just having someone understand.
Oh, that's so moving, Sophie. And sometimes those are the moments our kids remember. Not the times we fixed things, but the times we were just there with them in their pain. That's what builds real trust and connection.
Yes, exactly. And it helps them know that they can handle hard feelings, that they're not alone, and that the feelings will pass. I think that's a huge part of emotional strength. The belief that you can get through tough times and that you don't have to do it alone.
Completely agree. And another thing I've noticed is that when we make space for our kids' emotions, we actually get to know them better as people. We learn what makes them tick, what lights them up, what worries them. It makes the relationship deeper and more authentic.
Yes, I love that. Our kids aren't just extensions of us, they're their own people with their own inner worlds. When we're curious about their feelings, we get to discover who they really are. And that's such a privilege.
We've talked a lot about the emotional side, but I'm curious, what are some practical things you do at home to foster emotional strength? Like, are there certain routines or rituals that help?
That's a great question. One thing we do is a rose, thorn, and bud at dinner. Everyone shares something good from their day. The rose, something hard or disappointing, the thorn, and something they're looking forward to, the bud. It creates this rhythm of checking in, and it normalizes talking about both the highs and the lows. We also try to name our own feelings out loud as parents, like, I'm feeling a little stressed because I have a lot going on at work today. It models emotional literacy.
I love that. We do something similar, sometimes at bedtime. We'll ask, what was something that made you feel happy today? What was something that made you feel frustrated? It's amazing how much more kids will share when you make it a regular thing instead of only asking when something's wrong.
Yes. And I think it takes the pressure off too. Kids know it's safe to share, and they know that all feelings are welcome at the table. How about you? Any routines or strategies that have helped in your family?
Honestly, one of the biggest things has been just making time for one-on-one check-ins. I have 3 kids, and sometimes it's easy for things to get chaotic. So I'll try to carve out even 10 minutes to play a game, go for a walk, or just sit and chat with one of them. It gives them space to open up, and I find they're more likely to share what's really going on. We also try to use stories or movies as conversation starters, like, how do you think that character felt? Or, what would you have done in that situation?
That's such a good idea. Stories are such a safe way for kids to talk about feelings that might feel too big or scary to talk about directly. And one-on-one time is huge. I think sometimes kids just need to know they have our full attention, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who feels like, oh no, I'm not doing enough of this, please don't worry. None of us get it right all the time. Even little moments like a hug or saying, I see you're upset and I'm here, those can make a big difference.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, James. I think a lot of parents feel this pressure to be perfect. But really, it's about being present, not perfect. Our kids don't need us to have all the answers. They just need to know we care.
Couldn't agree more. And sometimes I think our own relationship with emotions gets in the way. If we grew up in families where feelings weren't talked about, it can feel awkward or even scary to start these conversations with our own kids.
That's so true. And it's okay to be honest about that. Sometimes I'll say to my kids, I didn't really grow up talking about feelings, so I'm still learning too. It makes it a shared journey instead of something we have to have figured out already.
That's a great point. And I think our kids appreciate our honesty. It shows them that learning and growing doesn't stop when you become an adult.
Exactly. And it gives them permission to be works in progress too, which, let's be honest, we all are.
Amen to that. As we're chatting, I'm thinking about how much of this comes down to connection. When kids feel connected to us, to themselves, to their feelings, they're more likely to be emotionally strong. They know they belong, they know they're loved, and that's what gives them the courage to face hard things.
Yes, yes, yes. Connection really is the foundation for everything, isn't it? I always say, if you do nothing else but make your child feel safe and seen, you've already done so much. Even if you don't have the right words or you lose your cool sometimes, if they know you care, you're halfway there.
Absolutely. And, that makes me think sometimes parents ask, what do I do if I've already messed up? If I've yelled or dismissed my kids' feelings in the past, is it too late? And I always say, it's never too late. Repair is such a powerful tool. Just going back and saying, hey, I wish I'd handled that differently. I'm sorry, and I want to try again. That models emotional strength too.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think sometimes we underestimate how healing it can be to just circle back and acknowledge when things haven't gone the way we wanted. I've had to do that plenty of times, like, I was stressed and I snapped at you. That wasn't fair. I love you, and I'm working on it. It doesn't erase what happened, but it does show our kids that relationships aren't about perfection. They're about honesty and growth.
Right, and it shows them that even grown-ups make mistakes, but we can own them and move forward. I think it helps kids feel less alone with their own mess-ups too. Like, if my dad or mom can apologize, then I can too.
Exactly. And I think for a lot of us, that's a new script. Maybe we didn't hear many apologies as kids, or maybe feelings were kind of swept under the rug. But we get to write a new story with our own families, even if it feels awkward at first.
Totally. And, something else I wanted to touch on is the importance of self-care for parents in this whole process. Like, raising emotionally strong kids is so much harder when we're running on empty ourselves. It's not selfish to take care of our own emotional needs. It's actually crucial.
Oh, that's such a good point. Our capacity to be present with our kids is directly tied to how regulated we are ourselves. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is take a break, go for a walk, call a friend, or just say, I need a few minutes to calm down. It's not about abandoning your child. It's about modeling self-regulation.
Yes, and it's a great way to show kids that everyone has limits, and it's okay to ask for what you need. I've definitely had moments where I've said, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm going to take 5 minutes, and then I'll be back. It's not always easy, but it helps everyone in the long run.
Definitely. And I think it takes some of the pressure off parents to be this endlessly patient, always available robot, which, let's be honest, nobody is. We're all human, and that's what our kids need to see too.
For sure. And speaking of being human, I love asking guests on the show, or even friends, about a parenting fail that actually turned into a win. Do you have any stories like that, Sophie? Where things didn't go to plan, but you learned something valuable?
Oh my gosh, so many. One that comes to mind is when my youngest was about 4. He had this epic tantrum in the grocery store, like lying on the floor, full volume screaming. I was mortified. Part of me wanted to just scoop him up and leave, but I also didn't want to teach him that expressing big feelings was bad. So I knelt down beside him, even though people were staring, and just said quietly, You're really upset. I'm here. We're going to get through this together. It took a while, and he didn't magically stop crying, but eventually, he calmed down. Later, he told me, Thank you for not being mad. It was such a humbling moment because I felt like I failed in public, but in his eyes, it was a win. He knew I loved him through it.
Wow, that's so powerful, Sophie, and so relatable. I think every parent has had a moment like that in public. But that's exactly it, right? Sometimes the wins aren't the picture-perfect moments, but the messy, real ones where we just show up with love.
Yes. And it reminded me that emotional strength isn't about having it together all the time. It's about feeling safe enough to fall apart and knowing someone will be there. How about you? Any memorable fails that turned out to be growth moments?
Oh, so many. One that stands out was when my daughter was really struggling with schoolwork. I got frustrated and ended up raising my voice. Not my finest hour. I felt awful afterward. But I went to her room, sat on her bed, and said, I shouldn't have yelled. I was frustrated, but that's not your fault. Can we start over? She actually hugged me and said, It's okay, Dad. I get frustrated too. It turned into this really sweet conversation about how we both get overwhelmed sometimes. So, yeah, it started as a fail, but it ended up bringing us closer.
That's so beautiful, James. Thank you for sharing that. I think those moments are so healing, not just for our kids, but for us too. It gives us permission to be real.
Absolutely. And, I think it's worth talking about how raising emotionally strong kids also means letting them struggle sometimes, within reason, of course, like letting them experience disappointment, or not stepping in to solve every problem for them.
Definitely. It's such a tricky balance, isn't it? We want to protect our kids, but part of emotional strength is learning to cope with setbacks. I try to remind myself that it's okay for my kids to be uncomfortable sometimes. They grow from it. I'm always there to support, but I don't have to fix everything.
Yes, and it's so hard. I think watching your child struggle is one of the hardest parts of parenting. But I remind myself, if I swoop in every time, I'm actually sending the message that I don't trust them to handle it. Whereas if I say, I believe in you, I'm here if you need me, but I know you can figure this out, that's empowering.
Absolutely. I had a moment like that recently. My older son wanted to try out for a school play. He didn't get the part he wanted, and he was crushed. My instinct was to downplay it, like, it's not a big deal, you'll get it next time. But instead, I just said, I know how much you wanted that. It's so disappointing. He cried, and I just held him. Later, he said, thanks for not telling me to just get over it. Sometimes, validation is the best support.
That's so true. And it's such a good reminder that kids don't need us to solve the pain. They just need us to see it and to be with them in it. That's what gives them the confidence to move forward.
Yes, and that's what builds resilience in the long run. It's not about shielding them from every hardship, but about helping them know they can get through it with support and with self-compassion.
Speaking of self-compassion, I think that's a crucial piece of emotional strength too. Teaching kids to be kind to themselves when they make mistakes instead of beating themselves up.
Oh, absolutely. We talk a lot about kind self-talk at home. Like, if my daughter says, I'm so stupid, I messed up, I'll gently ask, would you say that to a friend? It helps her see that she deserves the same kindness she'd show someone else.
We do something similar. Sometimes I'll share when I'm being hard on myself and actually say out loud, that wasn't very kind, was it? Let me try again. It's a little vulnerable, but I think it helps normalize the idea that we're all learning to be gentle with ourselves.
Yes. And it breaks that cycle of harsh self-criticism that so many of us carry into adulthood. If kids can learn early that it's okay to make mistakes and that they're still worthy of love and belonging, that's huge.
Completely agree. And there's another layer to this too. Helping kids understand that other people's emotions aren't their responsibility to fix either. Like, it's important to be empathetic, but it's okay to have boundaries.
Oh, that's such a big one, especially for sensitive kids or kids who tend to want to make everyone happy. I try to remind my kids, you're responsible for your own feelings, and others are responsible for theirs. It's okay to care, but you don't have to carry it all.
Yes, and I think that's something a lot of adults are still learning. Setting boundaries around emotions is a skill that takes practice. It's about being compassionate, but also taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And I think the earlier we can start those conversations with our kids, the easier it becomes as they grow. Like, it's okay to say, I need some space right now, or I can't help with this, but I care about you.
Definitely, and I think one of the gifts of this kind of parenting is that it creates a family culture where everyone's feelings matter. Not just the kids, but the parents too. Everyone gets to be human.
Yes. And I think that's what we're all aiming for, right? A home where it's safe to be real, safe to feel, safe to make mistakes, and where love isn't conditional on always being easy or happy.
Absolutely. And I think when we focus on connection, empathy, and repair, we're not only raising emotionally strong kids, we're creating stronger families.
Couldn't agree more. And hey, for anyone listening who's thinking, wow, this all sounds great, but I'm not sure where to start, just remember, it's the little moments that matter. You don't have to overhaul your whole parenting style overnight. Maybe it's one more check-in, one more how are you feeling at dinner, or one more apology when things go sideways.
Yes, and even just listening to this conversation is a step. It means you care, you're curious, and you're willing to grow. That's what matters most.
Should we maybe share a couple of practical takeaways for folks before we wrap up? Like, if someone wants to start building emotional strength in their kids right away, what are a few simple things they could try?
Great idea. I'd say first start naming feelings, yours and your kids. Even just saying, I'm feeling a little nervous about this meeting, or you seem frustrated, want to talk about it, makes a big difference.
I love that. And I'd add, practice validation. When your child shares a feeling, even if it seems small or silly to you, try to reflect it back. That sounds really tough. Or, I can see why you'd feel that way. It helps kids feel seen.
Yes, and don't be afraid of repair. If you lose your cool or dismiss a feeling, it's okay to go back and apologize. That's how kids learn that relationships can survive bumps in the road.
And for those who want an easy ritual, try rose, thorn, and bud at dinner or bedtime. It's such a simple way to normalize talking about both the good and the hard parts of the day.
Absolutely. And of course, take care of yourself too. When we're regulated, we can help our kids regulate. Modeling self care is a gift to them.
Yes, yes, yes. And if you're not sure what to say, just remember, I'm here. I love you. We'll get through this together. Sometimes, that's all that's needed.
That's the heart of it, isn't it? Just being there.
It really is. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this conversation. If you found it helpful, or if it sparked any ideas or questions, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. It really helps us keep these discussions going and reach more parents who might need a little encouragement.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening. We love hearing from you, so if you have stories, questions, or topics you want us to tackle, drop them in the comments or send us a message. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.
We really appreciate you being part of this community. Raising emotionally strong kids really does take a village, and we're so glad you're in ours.
Couldn't have said it better. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, progress, not perfection.
We'll see you next time on Humaning. Bye for now.
Bye, hast hatchad and the sea and section things.